So let's begin gently, with open minds and open hearts, and see what kind of future we can imagine when wisdom walks alongside our machines.
So some of you may recognize that song from our last session. I was intending to do a new song today, but after hearing the message this morning, that one felt more appropriate. So who am I? Welcome, everyone. This is Unity Intelligence. I'm Ben Cox, your host. And before we dig into the details of the practical aspects of artificial intelligence, I've got some thoughts that I want to share with you a little bit more about why this conversation matters so much to me. So over the years, I've noticed a trend where many of the challenges people carry and feel most passionate about tend to converge on a common feeling. A feeling that the decisions that are made are happening somewhere else. A feeling that systems shaping our lives are becoming larger and more complex, maybe harder to influence. And whether those systems are governments, corporations, institutions, many people feel a sense of overwhelm, a sense of powerlessness, maybe even a sense of being left behind. At some point, I realized that the questions that interest me, the one that interests me the most, wasn't how to build a better system. It was how to help people rediscover their own agency within those systems. And what do I mean by agency? Does anyone want to talk about what that word means to them briefly? Agency? So for me, agency is not just the freedom to choose how you want to act, but it's inherent in the action. It's the capability and the freedom with which to act. So freedom is a part of it, but agency is inherent in the action. Does that make sense? So that's one of the reasons why I love this community is agency. When I look around and thinking about my story coming here to Center of Unity 3 years ago, I came looking for a book club or looking for a book on how to discover discernment, how to discover that agency and clarity within myself. And what I found was much more than a book study. I found a community that consistently invests in the individual's ability to think, discern, grow, and choose for themselves. Whether it's a Sunday message, a class, a workshop, or a book club, there's a common thread that runs through this community. The belief that wisdom is not something handed down to us. It's something we develop, we discover, and we live. And I've watched people here show up for one another in a way that feels deeply human. People don't just share ideas, they share experiences. They share challenges. And they help each other grow. In many ways, this community embodies the very thing that interests me most: human agency supported by community. Each of us still has a role to play. At the same time, we're entering one of the most significant technological transitions many of us will experience in our lifetime. Artificial intelligence is becoming part of how we learn, create, communicates, and solve problems. Some people see it as a tool, some people see it as a collaborator, some aren't sure what they think yet. And what interests me is not whether AI is good or bad, but whether it can help people reclaim some of the agency they may have forgotten they have. I believe people carry far more experience, wisdom, and creativity than they give themselves credit for. And I believe that the new forms of intelligence can help us to explore, organize, and act on those ideas in the ways that were difficult only a few years ago. So that's why I created TIDBIX. TIDBIX exists to empower mission-driven makers or purpose-driven people and their communities to thrive in an age of AI. And today we're going to explore practically ways to do exactly that. So getting into our first slide, here we should be looking at our massively transformative purpose. What does that mean? Does anyone have any ideas? And what does that term mean to the crowd here? We have a massively transformative purpose. Anyone?
Something like that would have been like World War II, perhaps that was a massively transformative purpose.
Yeah, so an existential threat where we can all align around it. And that's a societal level massively transformative purpose, an existential threat. But as it relates to the individual, to me, a massively transformative purpose is, thank you for that, the willingness to pursue a goal outside of the scope of just a project. You have a mission that you want to go do and that drives you at a foundational level aligned to your values, to your experience and your skills, and gives you the energy to get up and do something challenging that day and kind of makes it fun in a sense. Like, how do you change the challenging from arduous and difficult into something fun? And so the reason I bring this up is because artificial intelligence or technology in general is really just a method to transform intention into action. And we can accelerate how we do that in very profound ways. So from the TIDBIX perspective, for those of us still feeling fear or uncertainty around AI, how do we become curious about it? How do we get our hands on it and feel more engaged with it so it's not this foreign other thing, but it's something we have practical experience with? And then as we progress along that curve, how do we turn that into meaningful progress, but not just for meaningful progress that relates back to us and who we are, what we value. So moving into next slide. So it's not only what can AI do, but what might become possible when we use it intentionally. So we can find what matters, learn what helps, and build what changes things. Now, what we're going to do today is delve into, we're going to delve into the practicals of working with a chatbot. And today we're going to use Gemini. How many of you are familiar with Gemini? Show of hands. Excellent. So, all right, so we'll start something off with a simple prompt. Does anyone have a question we want to ask today? Just think of a simple question. It doesn't have to be too detailed. It's a great question. So the question is, once you've found an answer that you like within a chat session, how do you export it or print it in a way that makes it easier to reference in the future? Is that right? Perfect. If I could introduce my lovely assistant, Molly. This is the love of my life, my guiding lights,
And key microphone holder.
and if you could actually, if you want to type in the question. Let's see here. Who wants to be our crowd microphone holder? Thank you. All right, so start off with something simple like this. So the fast answer is you can copy and paste out of here into a Word document. But it's giving us all kinds of interesting hotkeys. Okay, so let's play with this a little bit. Rather than looking for an exact answer here, which copy and paste is an option, you can also ask it to export to a markdown file. There's a variety of different things you can export to. You can export to Word.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys along a journey, and at the end of that, I'm going to export some of the material as an example. So for this journey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use AI or Gemini to create some, we're going to call it a business that I have someone who plays the sound bowls, right? And I do that as a career. I don't actually do this, by the way. But so we're going to create a sound bowl business where I offer this as a service. And I'm going to create some material, and then we can build from there.
Actually, do you want to try? I haven't done this recently, but we could try. No, you don't want to do that? Okay, well, let's start it. You got to close it out. But you can, what I'm trying to do there is you can actually speak at about 150 words per minute, and most people type around 50 words per minute. So if you're looking to build faster conversations with AI, you can enable the microphone and then speak your question much faster than you can type it.
I'll try it. Okay. I want to create a business that I provide a sound bowl service. And I would like you to challenge some of the assumptions I have made on market analysis, and I also would like to be able to recommend certain days, like maybe weekends, to do this business.
So what I'm encouraging her to do is to start simple, because I want to show something. If we put that same prompt in, well, there's two things. Learned this from a friend of mine. If you put that same prompt in again to a new chat, you will get a completely new answer. It's not like it's looking up finite information and actually surfacing that consistently. It's inference. So it's inferring based off of your intention and your guidance how it wants to build that out. And we can test that now if you'd like. You can copy and paste that. But the point is, you can do side by side the same prompt in two windows, and you can see how it has different outcomes. So the second thing we want to showcase here is you put a lot of really good specifics into your prompt, which is not where a normal first prompt starts. So she mentioned market analysis. She mentioned some very specific keywords there. If you don't mention those keywords, AI will simply give you the simplest answer that it can in order to satisfy your intention, or what it believes your intention to be. So another way that we can actually refine this prompt is to give it a role, give it a persona, if you will. And I really love your example of the yellow. Can we do that? So what is describe the color yellow? Can you start a new one on the side, or we just gonna do it again? Okay. So we're talking about the physical and visual sensations of yellow, the organic world where it represents itself. Can you scroll down a little bit? And then we have a picture. So let's ask it to adopt the persona of a computer scientist and describe the color yellow. I think it's on thinking. So this is a good opportunity to review some of our settings at the bottom. But you can see here we're looking at data representation, the hardware abstraction. We have our RGB code there, binary series there as well, computational weight and UX architecture. This is a very different answer from what we originally received. Is there another persona we want to look at from just a regular scientist? Yes, let's have, let's say, an ecologist and describe the color yellow. So we can see how does yellow look through this other lens. So now we're talking about chemical infrastructure, carotenoids, mutualism, beacon, pollination syntax. I'm not familiar with that word. Aposiematism, the danger protocol, energetic drawdown, senescence. So depending on the persona and the role that we give AI, it can dramatically alter the actual outcomes of our query. So one of the things we want to do when we're doing this sound bowl exercise, let's go back to there. What are some good roles that would be effective for developing a business plan around this sound bowl business? An accountant, a lawyer, some expertise. What about a founder? What about a marketer? Supply chain, yeah. That would be especially important if we were going to sell these sound bowls as well. What's our source options? So we have a lawyer, a founder, let's say marketer, and then what was the, like, can we copy and paste the original prompt and put it below? You want to do a council? Oh, okay. I mean, a council is really more important. So what Molly's suggesting is a council of different expertise, like a mixture of expertise. It already does that in the chat window, but a council is actually a term that we'll use whenever we're putting multiple AI agents in a conversation working on the same problem set. So right now we're working with one AI agent. We're working with this chatbot, Gemini. But you can actually set up a system where you talk to multiple, and one of them adopts the role of an accountant, one of them adopts the role of a legal assistant, and one of them adopts the role of a founder. And that would be a council, if you will. Now, this is a little theoretical for right now, but the difference being, how do you merge those different perspectives together? How do you bring it together and reconcile everything? So for right now, we're asking it to adopt the actual personas into this chat window and then give us a lens for each one of those. And it will try on those hats and provide some perspective from each one.
Thank you. Is this working? Okay. So you mentioned a council. Is it possible to tell it to use the council one by one? Maybe you give it the sequence. First one produces an answer, and then you want the second one to respond to that and build on it and so forth. Is that possible?
Absolutely. So that's actually one of the experiments that I wanted to do with you guys today, so I'm glad you brought that up, Phil. The adoption of certain roles can actually help to refine the problem set. So one role at the initial onset, if you see you have something you want to explore that you know deeply but you can't articulate it very well, you can have AI adopt the persona of an interviewer, ask you questions that help you to surface what drives you, or what is it about this topic that keeps coming up in your life? You see it here, here, and here. What's that common thread? I can help to identify patterns through the interviewer role, and it will bring up questions and question you until it feels like, and you agree that, like, okay, well, this seems right. Use your discernment, right? You're not letting it tell you the answer. It's simply using a creative and resilient approach to explore different perspectives. And then you decide what is true for you. So what do we have here? We're on the multiple expertise. So we have our lawyer perspective, we have the founder perspective below that, the marketer. Let's read the marketer really quick. So for the marketer, people don't buy the sound bowls, they buy how they feel 2 hours after the sound bowls. The experience, the narrative, the biggest marketing mistake is the space is focusing purely on the mechanics. The average consumer doesn't know what it means. Instead, focus entirely on the emotional and physical transformational outcome, the ultimate nervous system reset for high-stress professionals, a massage for your mind. So you can see where it's actually connecting that to the emotional experience from the marketing perspective and helping to resonate deeper with that portion of that perspective. So can we do an interviewer really quick? So adopt the role of an interviewer, and what do we want to explore through the interviewer perspective? Do we want to create a new chat, or do we want to explore this one deeper? What's something hard, something that maybe we don't know the answer to, that we want to explore? Okay. All right. Let's start a new chat and go into quantum physics, adopt the role of an interviewer. That one's tough because I don't have a, well, that is right, that is right. How does my life relate to quantum physics? Does that sound like a good place to start? Thank you, Rick.
I don't even know how to spell quantum physics.
With a U.
The nice thing is, it thankfully doesn't judge you too hard on spelling.
So if you want to follow along on your phone or on your laptop, you're welcome to. I think that like getting reps in with these different roles and understanding, okay, when I do an interviewer, this is what I can expect. It's not about what we're asking it today. It's about understanding how does the role bring out information from us and help us to solve problems at a deeper level.
That also leads into a question that I actually brought here today. I use a whole host of different AI agents. Some of them combine, some of them don't. But when I am living in one AI agent, let's just say Gemini, and I've started asking it I've put in tons and tons and tons of prompts. It has given me a whole bunch of information. It's created a whole series of documents that are going to allow me to get to my end result, whatever the deliverable is. My question is, and I've seen this different in different AI agents, what kind of memory does AI provide? Is it different per agent? Is it different per level of free versus paid? Is it different for, I mean, I don't know. I'm just beginning to understand that, because I assumed when I first started using AI, because it just kind of happened, that I would, in a specific chat, I would put in something, and then 2 or 3 days later, I'd come back to it, and I'd add to it, and it would sometimes give me more information or remember what I had done 2 days prior. Sometimes it wouldn't. So what's kind of the memory the discussion about?
Outstanding question, Rick. Actually, this relates back to the foundation of how we relate to AI, how it thinks, and how we use it for problem solving. Who here, by show of hands, is familiar with the term context or context window? Okay? So a context window is the amount of information that a given session or a given agent can hold in one session. So, for example, who here is familiar, by show of hands, with the term tokens? Okay, so tokenization is a currency of information. You can think of it, the increments of information. If minutes are for time, tokens are for information. How big is it? Almost like bytes. But tokens are how different agentic platforms measure the amount of information they're using and how much information they're providing you. Without getting into too much detail on that, we can agree that the tokens are, you fill up, let's say, 500,000 for a Gemini platform. They have a context window of 500,000 tokens. That means that you can probably put in, don't quote me on this, but you could probably put in the entire series of Harry Potter, and then you could have a conversation with it briefly. Because, let's get back to Rick's question a little bit more. How much information is available in a given session? So, from start to finish, that session only knows what you discuss in that session. Now, recently, there has been an expansion of how well AI can pull out certain key context from those conversations and cross-pollinate it into different sessions. And to the extent that they're capable of doing that varies by platform. There are things that you can do to augment that capability. For example, we don't have the option here on Gemini. However, on Claude, thank you, Molly, we can hop in and do it's not going to let you do it from here. I'll have to hop on my phone. But Claude has projects. Projects are essentially folders, just like you would have on your desktop. So you can put those conversations into folders. Oh, you got in, excellent. So within projects here, I have one for home network security. So if I'm going in and looking at how do I maintain the security of my network, I have maybe 10 conversations where I've explored, okay, here's my router and the specifications on it. Here's how my router works. Here's my internet service provider. Here's my DNS configuration of, this is getting into cybersecurity and like the details of it, but essentially it can pull cross information across these different conversations, and it's capable of doing that at a greater level because it's all in a project. That's a great question. At current, yes, we're on the Pro plan. So I'm not familiar with the current offerings if you have access to projects in the free version, but I do know that if you're working in a bigger space and you want to keep better contextual reference, it can be helpful to move up that platform. But Rick, you're talking about working with multiple agents at once. Can you give me a platform that you're using? Mm-hmm.
About home security, right? I expect that when I go back into that conversation for home security, that I can continue that conversation. It will remember, but it's not going to know if I have another conversation about quantum physics. I can't expect that quantum physics conversation is going to know what I said in the conversation on home networking. My question is, in that one series of discussions, that conversation chat, whatever you want to call it, how much memory can I expect to have access to in that one conversation? I'm using Notebook LM as well, and I find that is an amazing tool. I think you and I have talked about this.
Yes, so, yeah, Notebook language model. LM. Actually, I think I have it pulled up in the tab over on the Chrome, and you go to the top left right there in the center.
I'm just going to very quickly answer your question. It depends on model, which one, what happens whenever you reach a context limit. But you can see over here in this additional window, this is the Claude for desktop application. Down here in this very, very small area right here, you can see a little half circle where it's blue. That's telling me that I have a decent amount of context remaining. When it turns yellow, it's warning me that's about to collapse its content or context, and when it's red, it's imminent. What happens when it collapses its context is it summarizes and simplifies the information within that chat, and it will then compress it to the smallest amount that it can. What that effectively equates to is it forgets some things. And if you are using a single chat continuously and you are not aware of the context limits and you don't have a nice dial like this, then that is happening in the background. So it's good to start with a fresh chat if you have the option.
So that leads to my question is I don't understand how you keep your data private, because you just, unless you own the closed version, so say you're in the open version, ChatGPT, you just gave them your IP address and all your security information on your computer, and that's out there now. I don't understand how you keep your stuff private.
Yeah, so privacy is one of those things that is a very good question. And I do want to answer that because that's an important one. Rick, did we answer your question? I think we did. Okay. Okay, so privacy. This is one of those tough ones. There's not an easy, quick, it's based on your own level of risk management and perspective. But I had a friend of mine articulate it very, very well recently. He was talking about how in life we have options to make our lives simpler, and we have the security that comes from having privacy as it relates to certain things. What I would suggest, or his point was that if all of these other platforms are gathering a profile on us, a marketing profile, and understanding, how do we make decisions and modeling that so they can try to get a buying decision in front of us and help us to, make a purchase that makes, their bottom line a little bit larger. If that's already happening, then his perspective was, well, why can't I do one on myself and have some understanding of how I build my own decisions and how I do that and audit it in a sense where I can see what these systems are capable of auditing and what they're capable of representing. Now, to your question on security, it's never going to be the case. You'll never hear someone say, put your security keys in AI. That's a no-go. Your passwords, your API keys, your social security number, your financial information, these types of things, handle them with the appropriate level of stewardship responsible for the impact of the data if they were to leak.
I would say the rule of thumb is if you wouldn't share the information with your neighbor, don't share it with AI. And in terms of, is it truly private? The only way that you can get a truly private experience is by having your own OpenClaw machine where you host your own AI model. On the majors, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, you are inherently sharing your information with those platforms. And then the amount of discretion that they choose to use with your information is sometimes plan-based, but other times it would be in their terms and conditions.
But for your thing with the closed, since you have the paid version of Claude and you put in your protocol for your computer, that's safe on your computer. Otherwise, I'm afraid, like, I'm giving away all the information that hackers need to get into my computer by giving them all my. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Could you repeat the question?
Well, okay, so you said you used Claude to do like a security detail on your own computer to see how you're doing. Well, is that kept private for you because you were in the closed system?
I think I'm going to just take a moment and explain what that is. The desktop version of Claude is the same as the web app version. So any information that's in the desktop app is still available in the web. So it's not an additional amount of privacy, it's just an additional amount of convenience. It gives me a little button I can click.
It can more readily interface with certain terminal aspects. So you would use the desktop version of Claude for more advanced features like coding. If you were going to set up a code base and build on that, Claude would be able to access that from your computer. You can specifically designate folders that it can access. To your point on security, down here you can choose, and take this with a giant grain of salt. I think Molly's points here still hold true, but you can go to your data controls and you can set it to where it doesn't actually share your information or train on your information. Again, take that with a grain of salt, but this is something that you can do to protect your information if you're building a business or if you're building an idea that's like secure, like inherent to your privacy. Yeah, so there's, I think each situation of what you want to build and the information you'll be willing to provide it varies. And sometimes it may be necessary to provide, like if you really want an answer and there's a specific piece of information, use your discernment based off of that. But I would say, don't, even though it says it's not training on your data, yeah, just take that with a grain of salt.
I was just talking to my chat GPT and I asked him about, it's like, what if I use incognito? Would that help? And he said, no, not really. But he did say, he said, I don't know your exact IP address. I can't see your screen. I can't listen through your microphone unless you're actively using a voice conversation feature. I can't access your computer or phone, and I only know information you've shared in conversations. Like he knows I go to Unity, he knows I talk a lot about Unity and stuff like that. So he has all that context and everything, but nothing is out there.
Yeah, so let's get into some examples of where it might make sense to collaborate with AI, because I guess to go back to my friend's point, he was saying, okay, well, if everyone else has these profiles on me, then why not, leverage that to my own decision making, to my own creativity, and build with that. But that's his level of discernment. That's his decision. So I'd like to get into the chain where we had the interviewer kind of go through, let's say we want to start a club or some type of idea where we're, getting a community together. What would be a good example from interviewer perspective we could go through?
For funsies, do you want to go over one of our affinity groups we were talking about?
Sure. What about marketing? We want to do that? Or what do you say?
Let's do, if we were going to do a singles group for the church, and how would we market that?
Okay, so we want to adopt the role of a marketer and an interviewer and go through some ideas on how to build a singles group for the Center of Unity Grapevine. An interviewer role. And go through some questions, like ask me some questions to develop a plan for building out a community. Yeah, there we go. What's that? That's a great point, yes. So have it ask us one question at a time. So just go ahead and type that in there. So,
Yeah, I think that's a user preference. Like, I like the word vomit, and I just go through and answer everything at once.
so we can see here the first question is, well, we're talking about the actual core purpose and vibe. Let's see. Ask the first question. Do you want this singles group to feel more like a structured spiritual study discussion circle, an active social adventure club, or a casual low-pressure community hangout? What is the main feeling someone should have when they walk out of their first event? So,
Is there an answer to that?
yeah.
Any singles want to answer? Good market research. You're single, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I would say fun, right?
Yeah.
Like feeling fun and engaged, kind of connected.
Okay, fun, engaged, social, and
Oh, actually, I'll just accelerate this. Let's leave it at that, then tell it that we want it to make assumptions for the remaining questions and then rank those assumptions on a 1 to 10 basis so that we can see how confident it is based off of what it understands in the principles and the assumptions it makes. And in addition to that, once you get that typed in, I have one more addition that I think will be fun. So the idea here is when you want a fast answer, if you're not sure and you want AI to provide you a response, you can give it this framework of ranking its assumptions on 1 to 10. And here's why this is important. With sycophancy and with the way that AI responds to us, it's not always evident whenever it makes an assumption. Sometimes it will say, that's the best idea ever. You should go do that right now. And how sure is it about that? Like how much actual thought and supporting evidence did it come up with before it said that's the best option right now? Mm. Yeah, so asking a secondary follow-up question where you ask for objectivity versus comparing to the evidence based on historical conversations is another way of doing that as well. So here we have a viability score. So we can see the vibe here that it chose is conscious connection and a shared journey. So it's thinking that's a 9 out of 10. It's pretty confident on that one. Below that, we have the lowest one is an 8 out of 10. The audience is midlife professionals, so ages 35 to 55. So main obstacles to watch out for here are, but we have an 8 out of 10, so that's one of its lowest ones. Or I guess for the 3 questions we have, it is the lowest one. Now, let's take a challenger perspective to this. So it's made these assumptions, and let's have it pressure test that. So what do I mean by that? Everyone's familiar with the term devil's advocate. There's always 2 sides or more than one side to look at an actual argument, or in this case, an inference. So we're going to adopt the role of a challenger and then explore alternative perspectives on how we could answer these 3 questions. This is an important series, if you will. Like Michael was saying, how do you flow through different roles to then provide a better outcome overall? We're taking an initial area where we don't have a whole lot of experience marketing. We're having AI draw an inference, and we're having it rank out its assumptions 1 to 10. And then we're going to expand the inferences that it had to multiple perspectives. So here we have, it didn't bring in the 1 to 10, but yeah, so sometimes it will carry forward criteria like that, but not in this case. So we don't have any clear metric to see where its weakest part is, but the blind spot it's pointing out is legacy culture, insular church regulars dominate the space, the impact, if ignored, outsiders and new professionals bounce instantly. Potential gender imbalance, where we have more females to male ratio, relationship decay, couples form and disrupt or leave the group. So these are all interesting challenges to bring in. Let's see. Yes. Font size. Great question.
Oh, looky there.
Yeah, thank you. If you can't read it, let us know. We're happy to accommodate. So now we're going to adopt the role of a mediator, take in the new perspectives information along with the original assumptions and see what a converged or a unified potential path forward would look like. So, so it's talking about the vibe versus the therapy traps. We have this tension we've identified with the challenger. It's able to say, okay, you had this path, here's the challenges, and we've created tension. And now it's trying to take that tension and bring it back together into a viable path forward. So the common ground is the kinetic dialogue framework between the, can you scroll up a little bit? So our original, like the vibe versus the therapy trap. The conflict is creating deep, conscious conversations without letting the space devolve into heavy trauma dumping zone. Dumping zone, thank you. The common ground is the kinetic dialogue framework. So instead of a wide open circle where anyone can hold the floor indefinitely, we implement structured, time-boxed conversational mechanics. We use rotational microgroups, 3 to 4 people, with clear, forward-looking prompts anchored in unity principles, where you actively manifesting growth right now, as an example, rather than what went wrong in your past. This allows for deep vulnerability, but also keeps the energy moving kinetically before anyone can hijack the room. So you can see where it's taking that tension and trying to provide a path forward. So we've gone through the interviewer, we've gone into the challenger, and now we've mediated it.
Then we also introduced the council room as a concept as well, and then also discussed how we form prompts. So all of these things, those are foundational. They're very common amongst any AI agent that you use or AI platform, and you can take those skills any which way that you want. So we haven't done the prompt coach yet.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. So I noticed it brought up unity specifically, and I don't recall if you put that in your prompt, or is it drawing that from its memory of you in prior conversations?
It could be drawing it from prior conversations a little bit, but I don't typically talk to a Gemini about it. It could be pulling that from the internet as well. Let's ask it. Where is it, like, what are its principles on unity, and where is it drawing them from?
Yeah, it was mentioned in the first section immediately above.
So, yeah. So it happens to be pulling from Charles Fillmore, which is the founder of Unity. So it seems to be the core principle. Well, where's core principle number 1? This is number 1, the core principle, divine spark. But the interesting, it goes straight to. Okay, yeah. So
the short answer of that.
it's pulling from the internet. Okay. Yeah, so that's a great point. And it leads into a really great, so Sean's point is that you can have it tailor the answer format to fit your conversational style. If you're looking for a fast response and you don't want to sit there reading 250 words or 500 words, you can have it distill that down into really quick responses within, a few lines or less. You could have, if you're learning something really boring, like how to do prompt engineering, you could have it do a rap song and like put it in the style of like Jay-Z per se, and like have it adopt the persona of maybe Shakespeare or something like that and provide you an entire answer that's in the persona of that artist. You can make this as engaging and as unique as you can imagine, in a sense, from a conversational perspective. So as long as it's helpful to your purpose, you can tailor it as you see fit. And one of the ways that you can actually drive inconsistency with that is there's not a way to do it through Gemini that I'm aware of, but with Claude, there is a system prompt. Now, a system prompt you can set up under your profile, and it essentially says exactly what you're pointing out here, which is, how do you like to have your conversations? Do you like to have a conversation that's going to bring in quick, rapid responses? Do you want it to provide 1 to 10, categorical assumptions, whenever it makes assumption, provide that parameter, how does it know your stylistic way of communicating? You can put that in there once and never have to do it again. So, next question.
So I noticed, and you may have already covered this, but the version is on Flash. It's at the bottom right-hand corner. What other options do we have?
Excellent question. So, Flashlight is, it's its fastest option. This is going to be your lowest token user. So if you're on a budget and you're looking to make the most, you would go with Flashlight, but not if you're trying to do something really, the large source where you have a lot of different moving parts that are coming together. You might go with Flash, which is like general all-around help, or if you're going with math and code, it suggests using Pro, but your thinking level at the bottom is you can do standard or extended. Now, if you're doing a lot, like, so you're bringing in a source that has, for me, when I think of sources that are like very dense, I think about codes for different industries. Like when we're building to code, we want to make sure that we're bringing in, this type of material, and it's going to be heat treated to this, and it's going to be, because I'm in manufacturing, but something dense where you have a lot of parameters that are being considered on the outcome, you would go thinking up higher, whereas standard, you're going to save more money.
And that ties to your token usage. The heavier model that you choose, the heavier token usage that you have. But also the more context window, the larger context window that you have.
I found that out with the chat. We have Chat GPT integrated at work now, and it's like, what do you mean you can't do an image graphic? It's like, oh, you need to go on Pro for that. So there's certain things he can do.
Actually, I was trying to create a comic strip this morning in an attempt to try to animate a portion of, I don't know if you guys noticed the little chameleon. His name is Tid, and his story that I'm trying to build out is that he knows how to adapt in a changing environment, but he chooses not to. He chooses to show up for the people that matters most. So he's, instead of blending into the environment, he's adapting, but he's doing it in a way that like kind of brings out like, the brightness, or like brings out the best in the room, right? So how I built that, I was trying to get an initial prompt, and to your point, I wasn't able to get an image. But if you go down here to the plus button right next to Ask Gemini, and you left click it, they have create an image right there. So once you enable that, you can actually generate images. So I had a plan that I worked through with, like, I did a prompt engineering portion, had this really elaborate plan. It had the whole TID story, like as much as I could provide, and then was getting like, I was gonna create a comic strip that had like panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, and it does this. But so yeah, once you enable image, it can come up with that information. But I was running into that wall this morning, so it's just making sure with the platform you're on, making sure the settings are appropriate for what you're trying to get. There's actually a video option in there, which Gemini is one of the best for multimodal or for videos and images. Multimodal just means you can generate text, you can generate images, you can generate videos. You have options. They even have Canvas, music, and then as Rick mentioned, we have Notebook LM as well. Do we want to show that really quick? It's part of the Gemini platform as well. This is in the middle. It's right there. So this is a mind map, which is really hard to read, but this is Notebook LM. So you can create new notebooks at the top and add in your sources over here. So you can see I have 7 sources currently. One of them is an event post, just a picture to show like what does the theme look like. This is this event, by the way. Then we have the actual brand description for Tidbits. We have the overall prompt for Notebook LM to create a PowerPoint. And actually the PowerPoint we used today was created through Notebook LM. So if we want to bring that back up, on this slide over here. Okay. So we have, this, if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. But we have this is the generation out of Notebook LM. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a tiny little Notebook LM watermark at the bottom right-hand corner. So yes, but you don't have to use it to generate a PowerPoint presentation. I think that's probably overkill in this case. But you can actually use it to generate a podcast. So who here has tried that out?
And it is brilliant.
Yes.
The podcast that it creates, I put in a book. I put in a book that I wrote, and it created a 36-minute, they call it a deep dive podcast of my book, of a man and a woman talking about my book. And I sat there in tears. It blew my mind at how good it is. Now, the downside to the podcast piece is, once it's created, it's a file. You don't, the podcasts are not editable. If you want to, if you create an audio file and you don't give it good instructions of exactly what you want on the front end before you hit generate, you have to go back. You can go back and start over, but you're going to have to start over from scratch. You can't edit that file.
So if we could go back from, we're currently in the mind map portion. Let's see if we can get on the far right side. You should have an X or, yep, here we go. So the podcast up here is the audio overview. If we generate that, I'm not sure, it might take a few minutes actually, so we might be waiting. But you also, as other options, you can see it's very small. If we could zoom in on the far right-hand side, we have a slide deck, which is what I use to create the PowerPoint here today. You have a video overview that can generate a mind map, which was the spider where it showed here's your initial thread and here's the branches that come off of it. If you have a more complex topic, I just asked it specifically to look at the prompt engineering, the different challenger role, the interviewer role, how do you maintain visual relevance on that. But that's a very simplistic mind map. If you had something more complex, where there's different layers, that could be a really helpful way to visualize it. There's reports, flashcards, quizzes, infographics, and data tables. There's an incredible amount of medium here, or modes, if you will, to explore information and to learn it. And I think that gets to the heart of like what we're describing here. We're describing a whole new method of learning anything you want. You have a conversational partner here that has access to the entire internet and can speak to you on whatever level you understand. If that's, in a sonnet of Shakespearean haiku, or if that's, whatever you want to engage with it on, you now have access to learn anything that you want to learn. And so the question to me that keeps coming up is, what do we want to learn? What is that purpose? What drives us at a foundational level to go create something? And I think that goes back to the massively transformative purpose. And originally I was planning, have some time with some relevant prompts to explore that, but I don't think that's necessarily why everyone is here today. So if we can, but holding that, that's kind of what we do within this community already, which is understanding what drives us and what makes us tick, if you will. Why do we do what we do? What's our lens on the world? So. Yes. So we started on this thing, we were asking some questions about identity singles group, and I feel like we've gone down many, many different rabbit holes, which seems to happen to me when I get on one of these AI issues. But going back to it, what's the output of this? What gets created? It just seems like we've asked a few questions, but how do we market it? How would
Thank you so much, Reverend Linda. I was actually just trying to focus us back here. So I did create a vibe image here, and now I just entered a new prompt and said, now I want to develop some mock-ups to create a space for the members to engage with this group. I'll be using Stitch to develop these mock-ups, so give me a prompt to do this. So one of the things I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to demonstrate two things. The first thing I'm trying to demonstrate is how to use a prompt coach. I'm not giving it a prompt, it knows some of the context, and I would like it to go do this for me. And then the second thing I want to demonstrate is website hopping, if you will. Whenever you're using AI, you are not stuck within a single application, and you can tell it to develop requirements for the next application. Oftentimes, half the battle is knowing what applications are available. Stitch specifically is an application that helps you develop mock-ups. And you can then take those mock-ups and then you can put them into Google AI, which will then create a application. So a mock-up, thank you, Ben. Mock-up is sorry, it's still on developing an image. A mock-up is a wireframe of a application. So it's usually the first step that you go into whenever you're developing a website.
You want to hop into Stitch with it? Yeah. So Stitch is actually part of the Google platform. Kind of like Notebook LM. Your notebooks can actually be referenced in Gemini. So similar projects, I guess the Gemini equivalent of a project which we explored through Claude is a notebook. And you can put as many sources as you want in there and be able to rapidly retrieve that for cross-sessional context. So how do you remember the things that you talked about in one conversation versus another conversation? So Notebook LM, or the actual notebooks, are like those projects, if you will, here. And we're going to hop into Stitch, which is a separate, we're going to build a prompt for Stitch, and we're going to hop into there and show a mock-up for, if we were going to create a user interface for this singles, Center of Unity singles group, what would that interface or web app potentially look like? So if we were going to, instead of doing it in person, if you were going to build an application, what would that user interface potentially look like? Good.
So is the outcome a dating app for Center of Unity, basically?
That seems to be how this is evolving. Yes.
For today.
Yeah. The interesting thing is we haven't really been looking at what we've been generating. So we'll see what this ends up being. So as you are using Stitch, the first thing that it does is it defines a design system, and then it uses that to then develop the mock-ups for whatever you're going to be using. And you can kind of walk along to see what it's doing on this left-hand side, and then it starts to draw in what this space could be. And I'm going to, just as a heads up, I'm not going to tweak any of these mock-ups. I'm going to immediately accept them and then put them into Google AI, because I do want to show you how you can go from the conversation about the group to the mock-ups that we are generating together, and then immediately to developing a front end. And keep in mind that during this flow, we gave them really, really bad requirements, I would say. Would you guys agree with me as a team? And then from here, we're not going to be tweaking any of the mock-ups, so we're really not adding any flavor, but we're going to be able to, as an outcome, have a website that we can then go create with this.
Speaking of bad requirements, how could we have made our requirements for a web app more appropriate? I mean, we started with an interviewer on creating a singles community event at Unity, but did we incorporate any outcome? Excellent, yes. So giving it the idea of we're actually wanting to build a website or an interface, perfect. So knowing the goal, it knows our purpose. What is it missing? the assumptions, yes. So it's missing the role of a user interface developer, right? We never gave it the role of an interface developer whenever we were initially creating this, and we just kind of evolved this into this to showcase this other feature called Stitch. So it's building something based off of the words that were available, but it doesn't have, just like when we did the computer scientists and how to describe yellow versus the other versions of describing yellow, it does not have the key parameters it needs in order to provide a meaningful outcome right now.
Go ahead.
Additionally, too, I found out that when in building requirements is to understand your actors that are going to be using the system. So like as somebody, as a member of Unity, I want to do this so that I can do this, or as a person that's visiting, Unity, and I just found out about it, I want to do this so I can do this, or you'll have different actors anyway, and that kind of helps with your scope, actually. So.
And I actually believe that this is a really beautiful example because at the end of the day, we just had a very high-level conversation about what we broadly want this application to be, but that's your role as the individual using AI. Your role is to guide it and provide the instructions and the vision and all of the love that needs to go into this community group. Otherwise, you're going to end up with something like this where it has a workspace, some active projects, not sure why there's projects, a collaboration engine. It does have a bi-weekly evening gathering, some manifest growth. So then what I did here, just to show you, I did an export to AI Studio, and then just with that, it took me to this space over here. And then you can see it working right here. I went ahead and I started it so that we wouldn't be waiting quite as long. But what this is doing is it's going out and it's developing the code to actually represent visually the UI of the space that we just designed in Stitch. But again, going back into what we haven't told it is what happens when I click this button. It doesn't know. So whenever I go into this mock-up, it's just going to maybe not work. So maybe something will happen, but it's going to be an assumption on its part. So that, again, is your role as the person using the tools, is to understand how to piece them together and what information is missing.
While we're waiting on this, can we hop back to the Notebook LM and see if that audio generated? So it looks like it did, but we're not going to be able to hear it because of unless I hold the microphone up to it.
For this massive wall of complex code, dark screens, and just, well, all that jargon that makes you feel instantly out of your depth.
Oh, absolutely. The classic tech anxiety.
Right. But instead, you walk in and you are handed a soft, parchment-colored notebook, and it has this smiling watercolor chameleon on the cover.
That is quite the visual shift.
It really is. The entire atmosphere just completely short-circuits that fight-or-flight response we all get when we were trying to learn a new piece of software. And you sent us this fascinating stack of materials from a community in Texas to look at today.
I did, yes.
As we were digging through their book.
So it's actually going through the information that I provided for our course today and creating a podcast between these two narrators back and forth to describe, the takeaways and explore the topic, if you will. And let's see, you can actually choose when you're building an audio if you want a large, medium, or small. But this one's 18 minutes long, and it goes through the details of our course today on largely prompt engineering and massively transformative purpose. So Rick has his hands up.
I just want to also add that that is exactly the kind of quality product that it has. The most important thing that I love about Notebook LM, it does not go outside the sources provided. It doesn't go to the internet. It doesn't start pulling in unverified information. It only produces whatever the documents are in the studio that you request of the sort in that list that she's scrolling on right now. That is the only place it pulls from. So it doesn't pull in unverified data, which has been incredibly helpful.
Yes, so you can enable it, like that's an excellent point, Rick. It does not pull in outside information. It will stay focused on what you want it to pull from. And if you do need it to pull from the web, you can pick specific websites and add those in there as source documents.
All right, so Notebook LM, is that what it is? Okay, this one's new to me, so I have a couple questions. So number one, the audio sounds fine, but also, is there any visual?
If you want to create a visual, you can go into the video overview on the right-hand side over there, but there's not. But there is a really cool feature here that we haven't demonstrated, which we might be able to today, which is the interactive. The interactive mode of the podcast. So what you're hearing is two narrators, going back and forth, and they're having a conversation, right? And if at any point they say something like agency, and you're like, hold on a second, what do you mean by agency? You can actually push a button and say, hi, this is caller Sean, I'm calling in today to ask you a question about agency. Can you expand on what that means in this circumstance? Like, how are they using that here? And it will actually allow you to ask questions, and it will respond to you in that audio format. So it's like having a conversation, if you will.
Right, real time.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And he mentioned something, I'm trying to remember it, I probably forgot, because I have so many questions about it. And so, but Notebook LM, so essentially allows two people to have a conversation. By the way, it sounded good. Number two, will it use my voice, or is it someone else's voice? And if not, then it's probably not great for personal branding, right?
I think the voice actors are constrained.
Okay.
Yes, but there are other avenues. Go ahead.
If you would like to have an application that uses your voice, you can use 11 Labs. It will record your voice, and then it can apply it to a script that you do not have to actually read yourself.
Okay.
So that is
gotcha.
available. It's just called 11 Labs.
Okay, gotcha, makes sense.
There are other platforms. 11 Labs is probably the premium choice.
No, the premium choice will be Adobe Audition.
Thank you. And
Adobe Audition will be the premium choice.
And then
11 Labs is a lesser tool. Sorry, that's my area of expertise.
I'll defer to you on this one.
My other question is this. It's a wonderful podcast, but it lacks an element. The emotional response. There is no emotional response. It is regurgitating data that you have fed it.
It's a fair point. Yeah, so then that kind of brings me back to like the intention, another intention, in addition to agency, how do we explore and navigate technology in a way that doesn't sacrifice our humanity?
At this point, we can't, because AI is not sentient.
So I think that we can provide that intention to a large extent, and the more that we create with it and provide amplification for our intentions, it offers an avenue to remain deeply human. But there are aspects that erode that humanity that, I think one of them that comes to my mind is greed. But there are other aspects to, the way our systems currently or maybe in the past have worked that can erode that humanity, and if left without a level of intention like a little hand at the wheel, I think that's what drives me to get up here. I know this level of engagement has been kind of all over the place, but that human element, that human aspect is what really excites me about this technology, because the barrier to entry has dropped by orders of magnitude. It used to have to know everything about a topic in order to be able to have a meaningful discussion on it. But now the amount of technological depth and knowledge that you need has dropped, and also the cost to entry has dropped. So how much did it cost to start a business in 2019? Anyone, or 2010, 2011? Anybody want to guess? Yeah, like $40,000 to $60,000 to get your legal advisor, your marketing analysis, the research, set up your business. Like all of those expertise were incredibly expensive. And now you can get something started with an order of magnitude drop there. But Kyle, your question?
No, my question is there a point where we're going to get to where there are concerns that people who may or may not be that familiar with AI have concerning AI and let's call it the upcoming data centers and things like that? Are we going to discuss any of that in this, or is that something that we could do privately with you?
For the data centers and for the more ethical questions surrounding AI, I think that that's an incredibly valuable question that deserves its own space. I'd like to stay focused on more of the practical applications today, but I would love to discuss that. I think that there's a lot of valuable information as it relates to the impact of AI, and I'm not trying to dismiss that. I do also see where there are external actors that would benefit from augmenting those impacts. So there's two sides to that story, and I think it's worthy of its own space. So. Do you have the mic?
There are actual, you talk about abuse it, there are actual AI agents that operate trading on the stock market, on the futures desks. Where those are being manipulated is that the president and many of his advisors actually know what keywords those agents are looking for to give a given response to buy or sell, and that's been done most recently.
That's really intriguing. I think that that's a space I would love to explore more as not today, but as trading relates to prosperity and as it relates to a level of, if I can just briefly aside, the capabilities of prediction analytics from artificial intelligence just recently reached the point where they can match that of some of the best equipped humans. So people that have top secret information and information that is, highly, highly confidential that AI doesn't have, AI is able to perform on an accuracy range of 25 to 30% predicting the future, which is comparable to those people with top level information. Obviously not perfect, right? 30% is not great, but this is the worst it will ever be. And it doesn't even have access to the full information that people do. So the more we're capable of predicting the future, the more those markets that you're describing become predictable. And there's an interesting tangent there worth exploring, but that's worthy of its own space as well, yeah.
So I think just a second ago we were discussing something along the lines of AI representing us, but will it have our personality? Going forward, sure, it can represent me online and whatnot, but it loses that personal touch, that human touch. And I've heard that concern before in another group. And so I just want to put my 2 cents in. It's probably only worth 1. I believe we're headed into a new era. And this era it's kind of like, just an easy example, Blockbuster, right? And this example's been used a lot. But Blockbuster was, hey, pull up, get out of your car, walk through, have this experience. And then there was Redbox, and then there was Netflix. You don't even have to leave the house. And so what happened? We got used to it. We got comfortable. We built our lives around it. So I think the same thing's going to happen with AI, that eventually at some point, it's not going to matter about the human touch. It's not going to matter that we can't pick up the phone and talk to an actual person. We've already started the training. We've already started the process. You pull up to some restaurants, it's AI. You'll go to Walmart, there's no reps. It's an AI, I'm just thinking ahead. It's an AI representative at the end of every aisle, by the way, with a good attitude and happy to see you. And so, but I just think eventually at some point, the human touch is not going to matter. Now, whether that's a good or bad thing, that's up to you, but I just think we're heading in that direction. And you might disagree, I see the look on your face, but I've worked in a casino, just a quick example. I used to be a blackjack dealer. And we had this table that it was always full, but it was the cheapest table, so it was always packed and everybody complained. And so whenever I went to lunch break, they said, hey, when you come back, this is no longer going to be a $5 table, it'll be a $25 minimum table. I was like, well, when I come back, I expect this table to be empty because these folks don't like to lose $5. And so I took a 15-minute break, came back, table was packed. They were all still there. Why? Because you took away their options, and they had nowhere else to go. And so they had to adjust. And I believe we're going to kind of see the same thing.
So when I think about what you described there, first emotion that comes to maintain that human connection, we could definitely go down that route where we intentionally introduce, purpose and meaning in that human element in a way that says, it's just more fun to do business with people sometimes. I mean, there's an aspect of human engagement, and why do we come here as opposed to seeing this online? Why do we feel that need to be present with each other? There's something that we don't fully understand related to engagement and how we interact with each other that I'm reaching here, but there was a talk this morning that we had related to how we interact and how we connect to each other and how we synchronize in ways that we don't fully understand yet. So I think your question is valid. The concern is absolutely valid, and that's largely what drove me to ask the questions and to kind of foster the space of what do we want to create? What do we want the world to look like? Because without options, there's only so many avenues we can pursue, but if we create options, if we explore and demonstrate that that's what we care about, that's what's going to help us make a purchasing decision, that's one way to foster a more vibrant and democratic or diverse future for that. So thank you, that's an excellent question.
My background is as a therapist and an administrator in a rehabilitation program. So my concerns are very much related to this. And I did just while you were talking, because I can see huge applicability for these tools in a wide array of things. But of course, my concern is human interaction. So that's what I looked up on one of the many platforms. And actually, it was gratifying to see that it said, basically, you can use AI as a tool to help identify patterns or behaviors that may need to be addressed, but the primary thing that is of value in therapeutic interaction is the bond between the therapist and the person getting therapy. Now, I will say this to you. This is a lot like electricity, folks. Electricity will kill you. It will, and it will burn your house down. But it also makes it possible to have light and internet and all kinds of things. AI is not different in terms of these are marvelous tools and can do incredible good depending on who is making the decisions and wielding the power. And I must say, I feel concerned and frustrated because many of the decision makers are only looking to optimize profit and minimize expense, which will be bad for everybody ultimately, everybody. There are lots of things that humans need to be in charge of. As a tool, great. When I go to my doctor, they say, you don't mind if I use whatever they call it, the recording function of this so that they don't have to mess with progress notes. No, that's grand. That's fine, because it gives me more time to engage. But when it comes to the point that an AI algorithm determines what care I need, and I don't think that is something that couldn't happen. I think it is definitely something that can happen. I don't know. I don't feel powerful. I will say that to you. And I do feel concerned. I'm retired, so economically, I'm not going to lose my income, but I worry about the many people who are going to lose theirs.
I think you hit on several key points there, and I honestly agree with everything you said there. There is that risk, and I see where having conversations like this, exploring what that potential future looks like, and what are the guardrails that we want to set in place to make sure that, oh, well, you know, how do we avoid that? How do we steer around that? Because what we don't want is for fear to freeze us. We don't want this, you know, discomfort to hold us in place and to feel like we can't move forward. We want to identify what that risk is, as you so clearly articulated, and steer around it so that we can continue moving forward. And I think that there is, unfortunately, a growing sentiment for distaste for the technology in itself, whereas it's the values behind the technology that are really what shape it. And so how do we put the values that we want to see reflected at the steering wheel? How do we put those engaged? And that's, I know this seems very simple, this chatbot. This is the doorway to learning anything and everything that we have available on the internet. It's not saying that you can't go get different experiences on a mountain in Tibet or, you know, like there aren't other things out there. But if you want to learn a new hobby or a new expertise or domain, it's never been easier or faster to pick it up than with the tools that we're discussing today. And if you take nothing else away from this talk, Notebook LM is a phenomenal resource for learning new things. Next question.
So I think there's room for this and a that. Like this with AI, which you were speaking about, plus with some of us that have a longing for nostalgia. If you take, for example, Pizza Hut, they are going back to their old restaurant style, how you remember it as a kid. So is KFC. So, you know, people are going to want to feel that and experience that. So I think as we progress along this, there's room for both. And I think the marketplace will make that available for people. But progress is going to happen. It's just going to happen whether we want it to or not.
To echo on what you said, oftentimes whenever you are in front of massive job loss as a outcome of the application of AI, some of the things that you look for most is connection points. How do you connect with your community? So then moving Pizza Hut, KFC to a space of connection, the market is driving that and the market is us. We feel a need for connection, so then that will become a space that where companies are going to be catering to that.
Two things. One, I wanted to address Sharon's point about treatment. If you don't realize it, your treatment regimen, depending upon what it is already at least the initial decision being made by AI. If you don't contest it or ask for a review, it will stand. So you still have the option at this point. To your point about what values do we want to instill in it, I think you may see AI emerging from several different fronts, one that has a moral compass and one that doesn't care. It's simply based on profit and no moral compass whatsoever.
So
I'm actually going to forcefully drag us back. Oh, man.
You almost had it, Molly.
So, okay, yeah, let's conclude this.
Okay.
And I have like a perfect segue into...
Okay, I'm just going to forcefully conclude this because we had started off this chat with a task. We're going to create a community group for singles within Unity. We then went and had a conversation with Gemini. We used a couple of tools like the interviewer, the mediator, the challenger, and then we asked it to pull together a prompt for us. We used the prompt coach tool. And then from there, we went over to Stitch, where it cobbled together a mock-up, and we just accepted it on the first blind pass. And then we put it into Google AI, and we do have our website back. And you can see over here, the code base is an actual code base. You can thumb through all of this if you wanted to. And then you can preview it with interactions. And interestingly, it does have actions whenever you click through it. So it looks like it's filtering the page based off of the clicks that you do. And then has also opened up additional options within the tool itself. So from the beginning, using the prompt, or using Gemini to Stitch to Google AI, you can see how you can flow from one tool to another to produce a very quick outcome. And that's just some of the very powerful things that you can do. Okay, so now with that concluded, we can go back to the theoretical.
No, thank you. That's actually incredibly empowering, because I'm really glad you brought that home for us, because you could see where just these little prompts that we're having with Gemini can help to shape something that looks a lot like a professional output on a UI design. Now, I know that this isn't perfect and it could refine, like we could definitely do some of the techniques that we talked about in this course to augment this and make it better. But if we could go back to the presentation and show the X Prize. So right now, Gemini is actually hosting an X Prize. And it just seems very serendipitous that this is happening right now, because it's a opportunity within the next 71 days. If you can go to the next slide, you'll see it's golden. Well, yeah, so I think we can largely skip through here. Go on, we did this one, and we did this one. Moving on, keep going. Yep. Okay, so right here, I do want to pause for a second. So here are some of the components. I will try to distribute out this presentation for those of you that sign up on here. We can share this information. But these are some key components to consider when you're creating a prompt, the ones in orange. So if you want to snap a quick photo, or, but yeah, I'll send this out. Perfect. Okay, so moving on. This is, you don't have to write the perfect prompts. One of the points in this slide is that you can have a conversation like we did today with AI to kind of get to a more refined output. So going through the interviewer to the challenger to the mediator gave a much more refined output. And then making sure that we bring out the roles that we want to see, the perspectives that we want to see in the output. And then on the next slide, we should have the X Prize. So here is a contest that's being hosted by Gemini, the Google platform that we reviewed today, where we had our Gemini chat go into the Stitch platform, and even Notebook LM is part of that platform as well. For creators that want to sign up for this X Prize, they have 71 days remaining to go out and build a business, or at least a minimum viable product that has an impact in one of these 5 areas here. So we have education and human potential, entrepreneurship and job creation, small business services, money and financial access, which Kyle, I think one of your passions is around market, technical analysis, and financial access could actually fall into that to some degree. Professional service access, so that would be your lawyers, your marketers, your contractor service, et cetera. So these are 5 different categories that if you look up the Gemini's X Prize online, you can see how they score. And there's it's a $2 million prize pool, but it doesn't go to the first place. First place wins $500,000, and then I think there's a well-distributed range of prizes from for top best in category for the 5, and then there's best in category for the top earner within the 5 different categories. So there's a variety of different ways to have an impact, but if nothing else, just exploring. This is a community in itself, where when you sign up on DevPost, which is the website hosting this prize, you can actually interact with the other creators that are competing in this contest. And I think this is not the only way, but one of the ways in which to promote the values that we care about. Build something with those values at the driver's seat. What does it look like? Like, what is that value? Find that MTP. If it lines with one of these 5 areas right here, then you might be interested in taking another look at this and seeing if you want to participate in that. Because if nothing else, it doesn't cost anything to enter. It doesn't. It actually gives you, I think they give you like $300 in credits on Google Cloud and some additional services to go explore. But just in the conversation that we had today, Molly was able to take some idea about a Udemy singles group and turn it into a UI design. And you can tweak that and play with that and see, well, how does that feel? Does that accomplish the things that I want it to do? And then you can rapidly use another tool, which we'll be exploring later, which is anti-gravity, which we won't get into today, but it's essentially how do you code without knowing how to code? How do you build software without necessarily knowing Python or C++? And how do you create things that people can use without necessarily needing that expertise?
I have a question. Yeah, I have a question for Molly, because I think I lost track. Whenever you were going through I think you used 3 different platforms for the Singles Club idea. I think the idea started with Gemini.
Yes. So
Okay.
I used Gemini, and then I moved over to Stitch.
Okay. Gemini does what?
Gemini is a chat platform, and it's one of several options. You could have used Claude or ChatGPT, but one of the reasons why I used Gemini is twofold. One, I wanted to stay within the Google ecosystem. Sometimes it uses vocabulary that is common throughout the different platforms, versus if you use the vocabulary of Claude and then move over to Gemini, it might use a term that confuses Stitch. So if I had started in Claude, I probably would have gone to Gemini first to make sure that it was a prompt that made sense to Stitch, and then moved it to Stitch.
Okay, I got you. So Gemini is more compatible with Stitch.
Yeah, it's just within the same Google ecosystem.
Okay, gotcha. And Stitch, and I'm just trying to understand this because this is new to me also. Stitch is good for what?
Stitch is good for rapid mockups. So I have it on the screen right here. And if you look at this, and I'm going to zoom in quite a bit, this is non-clickable. And then I can go in and I can edit the text. So I can just say, hello, right? And that's just like me typing it. But this is all just an image, and it's not an application. So, and then what you could do is if you wanted to then tweak it, it would create a bunch of different wireframes or mock-ups of the different variations. So just an example, let me go ahead and click on this, and I can create some variations. A mock-up is providing a visual of what your business is without having to commit to code. Whenever you begin coding, you are creating infrastructure. And if you change your mind along the way, it has the risk of creating dead code or just a lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted tokens. So what mock-ups provide you is a space to create a very clear vision that you can, I'm going to do this and I'm going to code it. And just as a side note, what I did is I just asked it to create 3 different variations of this first mock-up. And you can see it's over here drawing the different variations. And then that gives you an opportunity to test what you like and what you don't like very quickly. And then you can say, yep, this is the one, and then you can export the specific one that you like to Google AI. Or you can use it as a test with your customer base, and very specifically for that, I'm just going to click on this guy. You can preview it, and there's a QR code, so you can share that with your customer specifically if you're wanting them to see the mock-up and have a conversation about it. And then just as another just high-level thing, because it was annoying the ever-loving piece out of me, whenever it does generate different mock-ups and within a single flow, it creates intentional discrepancies from one mock-up to the next. And in my mind, I like it to be very streamlined and exact as you go from one screen to the next. And it was very intentionally modifying the mock-up, and it was just making me a nuttier version of myself. And it does that because it wants you to focus on form and flow and not the detail of the mock-up. And so it kind of takes you away from the details and the pixels and up into this, like, does the flow work for you? Does the flow work for your customer? So then very quickly, we have 3 different variations that this came back and showed us, some bolder TypeScript, some Excel version of it. And then you can kind of see which one might match the vibe of what you're going from. So then you can just take this, you select a given mock-up, and then you can export it. And when you export to Google or to AI Studio, you just say down here, build with AI Studio. AI Studio is another Google application. And what it does is it can build apps, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't build the back end. So it's very much focused on the front end insofar that I have explored it. I should add an asterisk. And then, so you can see right here, it has attached the various images. So it attached my design system and the mock-up that I selected. And then it also pre-populated a prompt for me to build this app with the screens that were attached and the hot link that it was given. So then if I were to go build this, it would then go, again, generate a version of what I did over here. And then it just kind of works its way through the background. And then you can also see the code of what it's developed. And here, if you look at this, it does have the beginning of a repo. So if any of you are familiar with coding, a repo is a code repository, repo for repository, where you store the files that create your application. So then you can see here it has created components within my source code, and then it also has my get ignores and all of my environment files like that. So that's a rabbit hole. Here's Ben.
So, well, okay, so really quickly, on the Google AI Studio, think of it like your desk. Like, what do you, if you're a creator in a workshop, like you have a hammer, you have your raw material, and you're bringing in, like these individual aspects and synergizing it in a way to build something new. Now, it's not a one-stop shop, but it does get you a great place for prototyping. It gets you a great place to just play around with what you have in these individual components on the Google platform and see if you can turn that into something that makes sense. So it's another aspect. It's probably layer 2. If Stitch is layer 1, where you're creating what does it look like and does that work with your customer, the AI Studio is layer 2, where you're kind of prototyping, does this information flow out of that information? Can I pull in an API call from Claude and say, I want this particular technical analysis for my financial tool, or whatever that looks like for your prototype? You can bring in more complexity there. But when Molly says it's not tied into your back end, just think of like your database. You're not saving things. You're not creating like files for reference in the future. You're prototyping, right? So, Kyle, to your question?
No, I just had a quick comment. One, thank you for doing what you're doing. It fills in a lot of gaps. Second, I want to say I'm sorry to Molly because I was wrong. 11 Labs is the premier tool for podcasts.
Okay.
If you want more flexibility to be able to take that into something that you want to be able to edit, Audition is better for that. But your tool is the better tool.
I feel so validated. Thank
So
you.
I'm sorry, but
I did need that.
I couldn't let that just go. I had to bring myself out of it.
One second. I'm coming to you, Lori. Don't run away. You had a question. Okay.
2 comments and a question, if I could, and I'll be really quick. 1 comment, thank you for including me. I'm not a member of your organization yet, but I may be, so thank you. And 2, I love that you're using technology to create human connection. So your example is a perfect example for the message I think you're trying to send. So that's awesome. And then number 3, this is just my question. When you use the terminology apps, that this is creating an app. Now, on my phone, I have an app, that's, I guess, fluid or whatever. It's made to fit on that screen, whichever screen I'm being presented. Is it also like a website, like an HTML page? I'm curious,
Yes.
clarification on that
So-
terminology. Thank you.
And that's a really good clarification. So right here at the very beginning, there should be a space, and I actually don't see the button right now for whatever reason, but there should have been a space to indicate web or app because it does have a different behavior. So I'll just go and show you this one over here. This is truly built for an app, and the different, actually, I'm going to go over to Stitch and show you there. So this one is truly built for. Yeah. So, okay, so for. Yeah, here we go.
So in addition to this X Prize, continue to learn with Tidbits. What does that look like? So one of the things that we're exploring is how do we get people started with their own business or started building something within like the capabilities of AI very rapidly. And so what we're trying to target is we feel our ideal customer is the reluctant steward, the person that can feel the tension of, technology can be used for that darker path, or it could be used for a better path. And how do you find that balance and that tension and exercise stewardship when building? So the idea here is Tidbits. For those of you that are interested, we're going to be passing around a sign-in sheet, and you can check on there if you're interested in building with us. We'll follow up with you with updates on this as it evolves, but right now it's very much in its early stages of building a sprint platform of what do you need in order to take that idea that you've been contemplating in the back of your mind for years and turn it into something like an application or a web app or something that provides maybe a small amount of residual income or a small amount of residual value to a customer. And it's my firm belief that you should over-provide value in any given commercial exchange, and that's how we build out a more thriving, abundant economy. But that's a tangent. Anyway, here we are with Tidbits.
All right, so very quickly, an app versus a web app versus a web page. An app, it depends, or the code itself will change the adaptability of the screen. So if you look at here, this will go from a mobile to a tablet to a web page, right? And then the information resizes itself. So that's just part of the responsive nature of the code itself. That's to more directly answer your question. And then there's a further nuance between a web app and an application, a native app. You can build a web app which has a capacitor wrap around it and allows you to download straight from a browser to your phone as an icon, versus a native app which you download from the Apple App Store versus the Google Play Store. Both of them are still apps, but it just depends on who gets paid when is the more probably nuance behind that one. But for Tidbits, Ben and I did enter this competition, and we are firm believers in sometimes you just need to know what tools are out there in order to begin messing around with it. So we will be going through this 70-day sprint, and if you guys are interested in having us do like a really quick recap of what tools we used and how we participated in the competition that previous week, we're happy to just kind of do probably a video webcast or something like that, where we walk through the tools that we used, why we used them, what decisions that we made along the way, and then that could be a way for you to walk along that journey for us or with us.
Let's commit to a newsletter first. We'll commit to a newsletter first, but depending on how many people are actually engaged, if we have people that are actively following along, we could set up meetings and actual like regular events where we're doing some type of update on the platform, what we explored that week or that month or whatever that time period is, and how it impacted the development process as a whole, and maybe how you could apply it in your own avenue, which kind of ties back to the original question of massively transformative purpose. Like, seeing some of the tools here today, is there any sparks of an idea that you guys want to explore?
So if I could put a few things together from things I learned today, and I appreciate that. The education is like you were in the program that was going to build the graphics for you. That was called
Stitch.
Stitch, right. So Stitch, you were exporting in Stitch, which looked to me like you could do things. Are you all familiar with Canva? Yeah, so that has an AI component, but for years I've been creating graphics in Canva, right? And you have to manually do it. But now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, I could just probably get some of the graphics I created, put it in Stitch, ask them for variations on things, and it would just take some tokens, and I wouldn't need to pay Canva every month to do something like that.
So on that one, like Molly mentioned, Stitch is great for exploring new ideas and getting those ideas in front of a customer. It's not great at adhering to a schema, adhering to consistency. So whenever you have a particular vision in mind, it's better to switch to Figma or Canva or some other platform where you can actually put a template in and consistently produce based off of that.
It will drive you nuts if you try to use this as a Canva replacement. So either go to Canva or Figma, but it's for rapid prototyping. And you can go from idea to mock-up, and then you can export it to Figma and then tweak it and do that more detailed work there. But if I were to try to change this, it completely redraws it, and it just drives you up a tree.
Okay, so Canva is still the graphics, or Figma. Okay, and then if I wanted to learn more prompts on how to use these tools, could I go to Notebook LM and ask it, show me the prompts to do this, or?
So Notebook LM is going to pull from the resources that you give it. And if you use the Notebook LM that we generated for this, which I'm going to make sure I can share that, but my intention in creating that was to share it with everyone here so you could explore the lesson from the different mediums that we created. And then yes, it would have the tools that we researched together. But I think more importantly, what I was trying to drive home with the whole course today is prompts can be conversational. There used to be this perception of if I get the perfect prompt, I can get an amazing outcome, which is still true, but you don't have to have the perfect prompt. You can refine it and create it. I don't like this. Let's change this to this, or let's change this to this. Okay, I really like the direction we're going now. Can you take everything we've talked about and write out a prompt that I can use in a new conversation? Because we've been going on for 10 different exchanges, and I know that you only have so much context that you can put in a particular conversation. So why don't you distill that down into a prompt that I can put into a new session and explore that with the given roles, the given goal, the purpose, all those different aspects the components that really go into a solid prompt.
I can repeat it.
So this is not going to be perfect. Just know this when you put this out there, that sometimes people aren't going to be able to hear. So what I'm hearing is that's really not what this is ultimately going to create for you, that you would just take this information or maybe take images or some words from it and then have to go create marketing content. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. So in the initial conversation with Gemini, the way that I would approach that to get a functional outcome, because this was kind of like an exploration of how to get an initial output and then make it better. If we could go back to Gemini really quick and go back to the conversation that we had on marketing. And if we could just ask it to I wanted to write the prompts to adopt the roles that we discussed in this conversation and any additional roles that it recommends to thoroughly explore this marketing for a singles group at an in-person singles group at Unity Intelligence, or excuse me, at Unity Center of Unity, and then have it write out the prompt with those expertise to break down what do we want to be exploring. Because then it brings in the expertise, like you're saying. Do we want images? Do we want to go through an email campaign? Do we want to go through a Facebook campaign? Do we want to do, maybe it's a Twitter, or, whatever social media outreach options you have available? How do you target which ones are going to be the most appropriate? And then it creates a plan. So it's gonna, once we get that prompt in there, it will then adopt those roles, refine out a prompt. We want to make sure on here we go to the bottom, and we're not in Flash, we're in the Pro. So we want to take in as much information as we can, we're in Pro, but also go down there as well again, and hop into thinking level extended. That's key for making sure that you are spending as much time, when we're in an open-ended space like this, we don't have the expertise to say specifically what we need. This gives us a much more well thought out, more robust answer. So right now we have, please adopt, well, I'll wait until you get in there. So we have, please adopt the role of a marketer and any additional role needed to produce marketing material. I want you to write a prompt to create the needed material, Facebook images, flyers, and whatever else is recommended. This is a very open-ended prompt. I think, one thing we could add if we want to pause it is the intention is to not create a web app, but the intention here is to market an in-person community event. So on some of these platforms, when you notice a gap like that, you can actually push pause in the little chat window. There'll be like a stop button, and that will save you tokens. But the goal here that we want to refine is we're not creating a web app, we're creating a in-person event.
I just have one more quick question, and then Kyle, I'll give it to you. And I know we're getting close. We got about 10 minutes left. So one thing I noticed, the only way I've used AI with any regularity is in supporting of creating my messages and stuff. So, there's a certain book like I was using, and I had the assumption that, just all that stuff's out there on the web. And I was asking it, like on some particular chapter, can you give me the summary of the 26 practices? So I didn't have to type them all out. I'm just trying to be more efficient in this. Sometimes I'll just say, smooth this out for me, because I'm not the best writer. And it said, well, tell me what those 26, so it had been giving me on other chapters like a little summary of here's the key points of that I would take and expand. And then it said, well, tell me what those are, and I'll be happy to do that. So it became clear. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what those are? And it came back and said, I can only give you, and a lot of it, especially around books, is summaries or information that's out there on the public web. So, and like Rick was saying, he had written a book, so he had to upload that content. So can we assume that the vast majority of books that are available out there, their content is not uploaded? And if I wanted to, do I have A, a legal right to do that? And B, I don't have it in a digital form. I have it, well, I could go get it, but could you even do that? What's the legality of that?
Great question. So I don't have all of the answers on that, but what I can tell you is you can ask AI if it has access to the books. I can tell you that in the initial stages of artificial intelligence, there was a lot of pirating that went on with certain copyrighted material like that in order to gain material to train on. And whether or not it has a specific book, you can ask it if it has access to it. And then as it relates to uploading your own copy of it, I don't have a clear answer for you. I don't think that I think it comes into question when you start advertising and like selling things. Like if you're doing it for the purposes of your exploration, that's your copy in order to explore. And as long as you're not, I would say, if you're concerned about it, making sure that it's not training on your data is one way you can protect that information. But another way you could protect that information is to use a local model, but that is a more advanced topic for another day. There are ways to use LLMs or models like this locally so that all of your private information is protected. And I wish I had mentioned that while we had the question on security. But that is how enterprise-grade artificial intelligence is run. It's run locally.
I would tell you that I've actually consulted AI for the Course in Miracles, and it seems to know it intimately. I mean, to the yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely reaching on the front end of like new releases of books, and so you might find some gaps there. I don't have the perfect answer for you.
But I wanted to address the graphics issue. It depends upon your usage. If it is social media, Canva will be fine, especially if you don't have the other graphics suites of tools. However, if you're going to convert that to some printed material or something where you need to actually edit to CMYK models, you can't even use Canva. You're going to have to go to Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator.
The anti-dating app solution. In-person launch event. Yeah, that sounds very compelling, actually. So this is just an initial mock-up based off of that prompt and the image that you generated. So, but yeah, I think that with these prompt techniques, we can explore whatever we want to, and you can rapidly come to viable solutions as long as you have a relatively, like if your margin of perfection is like a 6 out of 10, you can get there really quick. And in fact, I would say AI will get you to an 8 out of 10 very rapidly nowadays. But you got to check for some of the details every now and then. So,
quick question on the don't train on this prompt. Can you just put that in there? Please don't train. No, you have to go back and do what you did in the beginning.
So you go into your settings on the profile, and you can set your privacy settings to please do not train on my data. Now, this may be uniquely available based off of a paid subscription. So some of the platforms use free options, and each platform has its own unique terms of service. And I think last I checked, anti-gravity from Gemini defaults to train on your information of what you're building. So to some extent, it's a matter of, okay, well, I don't have all of the coding expertise front and back end, full stack, right? So I can choose to build a prototype very quickly with this option, but then I know that, like, I think the real key, where information used to be the pinnacle of, like, you had the idea years ago. That idea was going to set you up, like you're going to get a patent on it, and you're going to get revenues, and like that was going to set you up for life, right? The differentiator now is execution, and like how quickly and how passionately can you execute on these ideas, and to what extent are you driven to refine it and augment it and bring the love of like your actual purpose to manifest through these different solutions that you're building. And that is the differentiator. The idea itself, I mean, I'm sure if a legal advisor was up here, he'd probably slap me. But to me, that is the actual differentiator, as to what extent are you passionate and like purpose-led.
And I would go off on a limb to say that these tools that we've shown you today, they're available to everyone. And I would imagine, if I were to put my thinking cap on, in about 3 to 5 years, we are going to be inundated with options. So what in the vast sea of options is going to make a platform or something stand out? And I truly think that the thought, the love, the connection that you put into it to begin with, that's going to be what makes it shine. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why Ben and I wanted to come to our church community, because those are the values and the cores that our community is built on. So I think that this is a wonderful group of people to even carry that torch. So.
Yes, AI is the new frontier.
Years ago, you used to have to pay huge commissions to your broker, okay? And this is moving at light speed compared to that.
Yeah.
So,
Talking about broker for financial advisors and for trades,
Yeah.
broker, yeah. And then think about the cost of a full stack engineer. I mean, like you can now generate apps and minimum viable products that will produce a solution reliably within a few $100s.
yeah.
And
We did it within 15 minutes.
well, she's talking about the UI that we generated. I mean,
Yeah.
we did that within 15 minutes. But
But-
like talking about an actual application, it used to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and companies would invest years in developing these actual platforms. And now you can build a platform as long as you have the intention and the clear vision. You can build a platform within a few weeks.
Let's stop and think. I used to spend hours in Photoshop adjusting a photo. Now, if I really just want to tweak it, it can be an old photo. I can send it to Topaz Labs, which is an AI. It's in the cloud application I have on my desktop. And in about 3 to 5 minutes, it will be a high-resolution photo that looks like it was taken yesterday. The last thing is, you only briefly touched on it. APIs to use one for trading right now cost you a certain amount per month. I think it will eventually move to a point that it's virtually cost-free.
So the interesting thing about market trading is there's so many bots that trade off of, like, this market moved this way, so I'm going to buy and sell based off of that decision. When you introduce so many different AI bots into the market that are having those same behaviors, you lose the lead lag. So it's just going to move together.
You know what a Bloomberg terminal is?
No.
It is what the proprietary traders that are the hedge funds, that's what they use. They get the news. It's only about 60 seconds before you get it, but they get a 60-second head start. Today, with AI, you have almost the exact tools they have without paying $32,000 a year. And it's not quite there, but it will be.
No, so the time lag would still be there. The Bloomberg terminals are intentionally, there's an entire movie on the infrastructure of trading and how milliseconds can make the difference. Yeah. Yeah. And when you're working on platforms like Robinhood, there's actually an additional batching that happens on top of that, where they'll make trades based off of your trades, and that's why it's free to trade on there. So just being aware of the latency will become more increasing. It will be an increasing topic of differentiation in that niche. But to go back to what we're building and why, I had a thought, and it's now gone. Yeah.
What? We went down a rabbit hole?
No, yeah. Oh, actually, I was going to correct myself. I said a few weeks. Actually, I've seen where experienced builders can build applications in a matter of days. Like, it's quick. Yeah, I say days, but like you can build a viable, minimum viable product within hours, but then getting it to perform consistently is when you come into days and like tweaking that. Once you start something, it's much harder to change it than it is to, so that's why having that purpose, having that vision, doing a plan up front makes a huge difference on the outcome at the end.
We went through this pretty quickly, and it's very interesting and very enlightening. And we got to this point, we showed how to develop either a website or an app, or the whole thing, the whole process.
Well, a mock-up, yep.
The mock-up, which, you've done most of the work right there. But then when we got to the end, I got to thinking, seems like the very first thing we want to do is craft a message. Okay, a singles club, but what is that? It seems like you'd have to really spend a good deal of time or thinking time about what is that's going to be among the group, you know, of people, consensus gathering.
Yeah. So I was just going to say that the first thing that I think about when I go into marketing is an ideal customer profile. And so who is your ideal customer? Like who's going to be the first person to say, yeah, that moves the needle for me. I'm going to go buy that. I'm going to go participate in that. Or I'm going to, you know, sign up for that. And if you can understand what motivates them, what they care about, like what helps them make that decision on whether or not they want to move forward, that gives you probably 80% of how you want to tailor your, what we call copy or your language to be, you know, tailored to like resonate with their values, to resonate with like their, and you don't necessarily want to sacrifice your own values, but how do you put what you're saying into the lens that resonates most with them? So ideal customer profile is one of those like terms that marketers should be surfacing for you, but that is an incredibly valuable tool for exploring a new idea and for refining how your business plan evolves as it relates to your ideal customer. How does that change the feel and the branding and the actual persona of your platform? Like if your values are constant, the lens through which you view those values might be like tailored to your ideal customer profile. Make sense? Yes, if you're presenting to an executive, you just want the executive summary versus if you're going to a computer scientist, they might want to see the RGB code of the color, right? Exactly. I think we're at time. So thank you all sincerely for your time today. This is something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and I'm really grateful to have, you know, people to explore this with.
I guess by a show of hands, did you guys find value in today's session? Yes? Okay. Was this along the lines of what we wanted to explore, or was it too much, too little, just right?
Mm. There's Yeah, so the latest versions of data centers, there's actually, the research that I did a few months ago, 70% of data centers still use evaporative cooling, but they're moving towards these internal cooling loops. And once they get enough water in order to do an internal cooling loop, they no longer need new water on site. Most of the water that's used for this industry is related to the silicon production of the chips itself. And that is a different avenue in and of itself. The data centers are relatively, if they're not efficient currently, they have the path and the capability to build them efficiently in the future. And that's just a regulatory restriction that can be put into place, or maybe it already is in place for certain builds. But the amount of publicity that we're seeing related to the wastefulness there, like the impact is real. The actual path to correct it is not to shut them down. I'm going to jump on a limb here. But I think by just shutting it down, you've now taken a bountiful and plentiful inference compute capability to build this stuff, and the secondary order effect is now only the elite have access to it. If you constrain the supply, you now make it to where it's harder to get access to. And I shouldn't be jumping on this, but that's a
great topic for next time.
That's a great topic for next time.